And welcome everyone to the Fanitarium, where we do interviews with, well, authors, with voice actors, with professionals in the field, and people who love fandom. And today I have someone returning to the show, who was last on, oh, good grief, 4 years ago?
Quite a while ago,
Maybe.
yeah. I think it was just after the third book had come out. Yeah.
It was before I moved here to Arizona to do my master's degree and then started working. So at least 4 years.
Yeah.
We'll
Wow.
say that. I remember
Time
where the computer
flies.
was in my house. But yeah, so no, I can't remember. I remember your name is Jake Gray, but I remember on your
Yes.
books, I believe you went by Israel Gray.
I did originally, and then I updated it to be Jacob Israel Gray as kind of
Okay.
the author name. So yeah, you could find the Dark and Day series under Jacob Israel Gray around Amazon and now Audible. That's another big change that's happened in just in the past few months.
Yeah.
We have gotten almost caught up with the books. Now all narrated by this guy Wayne Farrell, who's amazing. You should go check him out. And
So
that's been
let's
an
talk
amazing
about that though.
process.
So we have lots of friends who actually do work on Audible who do voice
Mhm.
stuff. I had co-hosts that do work on there. He just got signed up for a 13-book series, so he's like, "Yay, I can feed
Wow,
myself."
that's
Um,
fantastic.
and that type of one, he gets paid up front for some of it, which is good because that's a lot of work.
That's a
But
lot of work.
how did you find your narrator? Because I know it can be what is it called, APX, where people can audition and find it, or sometimes they can send it to you. Sometimes you just get lucky. How did you find them?
Yeah, yeah. So I did go through the ACX web service. So they kind of manage the business side of having an audiobook. But it was fascinating. It was really cool to go through the process of coming up with a script and choosing what parts of the book I want to get their different voices on. So I did a couple samples around different kind of just straight narration paragraphs, a couple that focus on some dialogue with the main character Jono, and then a couple other samples of just to try and get the range. So I think there was another sample around the Sage of Ages, who's this kind of elderly wizard type character, and the Empress of Eyes, who's kind of all powerful, kind of evil Empress character. And then I wanted to see how did they do that range of narration and the voices, where do they do kind of extreme, almost a very colorful sounding voices, or how is that balanced out with kind of an easy flow and just subtle changes in their voice and tone to designate the different characters?
Okay. How long of a search did it take? Like how much time?
I had it going for a couple weeks, and I think I had probably 40 different submissions that we went through. So it felt like it was a pretty good uh, wide range of options, and there's probably five guys. I was thinking about a male voice as the narrator because Jono is the main character, and I think it just aligns to that. There's a particular type of uh, kind of soft British voice. They in the ACX tool they let you kind of select some narration types. So do you want it to be the voice style to be uh, serious and dark, like a thriller, or what sort of tones are you looking for? So you have some guidance for the voice actors, and then what accent or voice are you aiming for? So I got to kind of select some of those, and so even with a lot of people with a lot of range, they had some guidance going into the sort of feeling that I was looking for. And then going through it, I ended up there's probably five that overall really I was really excited about, and I ended up going with Wayne. I think mostly because his voice just really settled into my ear really well, and he did. So just from the narration, it felt very natural. It felt like I could listen to this for many hours on end. That was kind of like the first thing I was looking for. And then his voice really matched what the kind of sound I was looking for Jono, and then he did a great job with the Empress as well, which is kind of hard to do. A great narration, a strong and varied male characters, but then do a female character that sounds just female enough, but also blends well with the straight normal narrator voice. So once that got going, it took up a few weeks to kind of get all of the text all ready for him, and then it was a couple months. It's probably once he got started, probably about 6 weeks for him to get through the first novel, and then we've kind of been working our way through the rest, and now he's working on book 4.
So when you said you had to get the text ready, did you like change the format of your novel a little bit so it could make it easier for him, or did you just change how the words work? Because I know a lot of them, what they do is they have them on a tablet, kind of the scroll versus flipping pages and so on.
Yeah. It's just prepping a Word doc just so it was easier for him to kind of look through it, and didn't necessarily need to be cutting out some of the other text and just making sure it was just the text that would end up in the audiobook.
Okay. And just so people remember, Darkened Day is basically kind of your love letter to old school RPGs, fantasy RPGs, kind of like Final Fantasy and so on, but in novel form. But it's not, I wouldn't really describe it as, what's the genre called? Lit RPG?
Yeah,
is that the genre that
is the genre that is kind of exploded?
I wouldn't put that in there. I wouldn't put that in that.
It's definitely not that. There's some references to things that some elements that you may find from classic fantasy novels or video games, but it's not lit RPG in that there's not like a game mechanic design in the narrative itself. It's really more of a classic blend of a Harry Potter meets Star Wars or Lord of the Rings meets Narnia sort of story where the world is the world. There's elements of, you can get powers and then you train up those powers, but it's not as explicitly designed to be like, now you're a level 5 and you unlocked whatever.
And last time we talked, as we said, was 4+ years ago, and that was when book 3 was out. I have to say I am jealous of people who have print versions of this because the art is awesome, and they can see it better than you can if you have a digital one. But 40+ years, and now you have book 4 out. What was I know back then you said you were having some challenges with, and you had an idea for book 4, but you were having challenges kind of ironing it out. Did that continue to happen for this one?
Yeah. It took a while for me to understand exactly what the right theme was. So each of the book has kind of a different moment of growing up that it focuses on based off the age of the characters, and there's a theme that relates to that sort of period in time. And I think I was struggling with exactly what age to put the characters and what's the right combination of the story plot and then tying that to a theme that makes sense for their age group and would be interesting to tell a story about. So it was just a lot of changes in my own life, having kids and kind of focusing on managing babies and becoming a parent in a more focused way. And so it was a journey of my own to get through making that balance and figuring out where I could carve out the time to develop these novels and then also do everything else that life is thrown at you. So I ended up doing a bit of a time skip from book 3, where we kind of left off the characters in at age 15. They're still kind of deep in the heart of the kind of academy story of growing up and being part of a school situation. And book 4, The Impossible Quest, starts with them at graduation. They're all around 19, and it's a story about finding what are you going to do after this. What do you want to do with your life? and that's part of this impossible quest of, how do you can't find that out until you just start going on the quest. So there's this kind of initial moment early in the book where some of the students originally from the day side of the planet get called on to do a knight's quest, and it's kind of this situation where they get summoned to this epic city, and they talk to an oracle, and they're supposed to do these epic quests, and that's one of the ways that the day will help you through this sort of rite of passage of calling you to a quest, and that's going to be kind of will help you kind of determine what your path in life should be.
So when it came to this fourth one, did any we talked about a lot of the influences last time. We talked about playing Final Fantasy as a kid. We talked about Super Nintendo Final Fantasy, I believe, is the main ones we talked about, and this older sprite-based RPGs and so on. Did this one have any thing that helped influence it from a more of a modern sense, a more of a newer sense, or is it still just the old school sensibility of how those stories are told?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of components that mix a little bit of the old classic feeling with some elements of the new. I always, I love Fellowship of the Ring. I wanted to do something in a more classic, progressive adventure quest sort of story. So there's some influences there about the team coming together and them going to find out what do they need to do, and then working through different areas as they move on through a quest. But as the book talks through some of these other knights quests, there's a lot of influences around the Olympics, actually, and different sort of crafting shows and arts competition shows, like these baking shows. We've been watching a lot of this, the Great British Baking Show. Yeah. And so there's a spirit of as kids from around the day go to get their knight's quests, that day world is kind of stopping and listening, and there's like the same sort of Olympic interviews on these children or young adults going onto these quests, and do they have to go through a gauntlet like a Minotaur sort of puzzle, or hunt down some evil monster, and so there's this element of a media where the world is watching these kind of new, momentary superstars like we have with the Olympics, and what does that relationship look like, and how does that drive certain behaviors? There's an element of getting a sponsorship from merchants across the day to support you on your quest, and just kind of show off the elements of their charms and their enchanted weapons as it relates to getting some attention going on this popular knight's quest.
And too bad, the actual Olympics were canceled or postponed. I guess not canceled. But you could have tied it in with the actual Olympics. It would have been happening next week-ish, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's a missed branding, cross branding opportunity.
But of course, this year, no one could really have realized what. I'm just wondering, with what happened, were you at a point where you could actually get more work done on finish this book quicker because of it, or was it already done by the time everything kind of fell apart?
It was mostly done by the time everything fell apart, and but I was able to focus more on some other marketing and promotion of the series. I've redone the Dark and Day website. It's just www.darkandday.com. So now it's showcasing a lot more of the art and characters. And I worked with some people to kind of redesign that to show off the art. Really some of the amazing characters and scenes that we have illustrating the world. So that was a big effort. And then just spending some time thinking about book 5 and the rest of the series.
And I can say the cover-wise, this one has, fits right on with the rest of them. Just as colorful and vibrant as the others, which I appreciate. This is the type of series with the type of cover that catches you, because I've noticed there's 3 types of covers. One that is just kind of plain, and the book just kind of speaks for itself. Like, for example, like Artemis Fowl. It's just a gold cover with some texture on it, and it says Artemis Fowl. Then you have the ones with models. Think Fabio. And you're like, oh, that's either a werewolf book or a vampire book. Or look, oh, it's a werewolf vampire harem book. Okay. Nope. Um, and those are
You
the
know
ones
what you're getting into. Yeah.
with with art that strikes you, and this is definitely one of those. Other ones I can think of that have always pulled me in that way were classics. Like the Xanth books by Piers Anthony. They always had covers. They're like, oh, why is that person riding a cloud? Okay, I'm gonna look at that one. They always had stuff like that, and I definitely appreciate that because it draws you in. A good cover artist is invaluable, or cover photographer, depending on
Absolutely.
how you want to do it. But it's invaluable. I do really love the art for this one, and too bad there's not like conventions where you could like go and like sell like one sheets of these covers
Yeah.
or give
Yeah.
them away. I guess with your books, that'd be really cool if that could happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I had gone to it's been a couple of years now, but I had gone to the Emerald City Comic Con, which was a great experience. And maybe if this whole COVID thing blows over, we'll get back out to conventions and meeting each other in person.
I'm in Arizona. Who knows what's
Yeah.
gonna happen?
Who knows?
I just hope it ends out relatively well. But as far as this one goes, if you have read the first three, it continues the story right along. Like you'll know these characters really well. As you said, that jump in time, I consider that very wise because I remember finishing book 3, going, where is he going to go for the next one without like kind of redoing it.
Right.
And that's the struggle. Like a lot of the time, people come back for sequels later, and it just kind of feels either too different or the same.
Yeah.
And you don't want it to feel either. You want it to continue. And so I think the time jump was very wise, and it it got him out of a familiar setting, which was needed.
Yeah.
It's the example I give is I really like, for example, the Fantastic Beasts movies for Harry Potter because it's something very different. It's not in Hogwarts,
Yeah.
and they are moving on into a world with adults, um, and stuff that you haven't seen before. And I appreciate being able to move out of what we've already known.
Absolutely. When I was first reading the Harry Potter stories, I loved them. They're great. They're really well written. Each new mystery is kind of compelling, but that was the thing that I wanted out of them was like, show me the rest of the wizarding world. What else is out there? Go hunt it. Go hunt something. Go show me one of the other schools. Go do like a student abroad program. And they give you little hints of that, but it is very bound to
Yeah.
Hogwarts the entire series.
And when it's book 7, the rest of the world's kind of falling apart by then anyway. But that's why, like Fantastic Beasts, especially the first one, it's like, wow, this is what the rest of the world's like. That is awesome.
Yeah, the world building is pretty fun.
I gotta pause for just a second. I hear a crying baby somewhere.
Okay.
I'm gonna check on that. Hi guys. As we took that break because my kids were crying, let's talk about our webpage. Everything that we do is now on YouTube. It is on Let's Talk, where we currently have over 1,000 subscribers, and we have all of our shows here. Looking right here, we have Let's Talk Spoop. What is Let's Talk Spoof? It's about horror movies, especially lesser-known horror movies. My friend Don reviews them. I've done a couple of them, and we have Let's Talk Spoop, where he talks about horror movies every single time. We talk about books. Here is Brian. He's talking about Ray Bradbury books right now. Fandom. Let's Talk Fandom is here. Our most recent one is the Final Fantasy VII Remake discussion. We have book discussions, comic book discussions, and so on. Let's Talk TV. I know Brian's been reviewing Walking Dead. He's talked about Community. He's talked about Haven and others. DC Justice Cast. This has been on here for a while. Where DC Justice Cast, we literally talk about all things DC Comics. Recently, I talked about the trailer for Man of Tomorrow, a Stargirl premiere. We have Gold Lantern got added. We have Birds of Prey coming to DC Online, and lots of different stuff. HP Lovecraft. We have Let's Talk Streaming, where I talk about different streaming services. There's a ton of them. Stuff that dreams are made of, which is to talk about the top films of all time, AFI Top 100. There's other playlists. There's running stuff. We have Marvel. We have the Marvel show. It's called Odin's Beard. I have a list of how films make money, a series about that. We have Gungan Council. We have Let's Talk Star Wars, and so on. It is all here on our YouTube channel. You can type in Let's Talk. We can type in Let's Talk Spoop, and it will show up. Right now, we have quite literally thousands of episodes, tons of different lists. As we said, from Marvel to movies to films. We have bonus clips where we talk stuff that I deleted from main shows and just put them out there for other people to see. We have talks about more books. We talk about reviews. We talk about racing. We talk about we have our audio dramas. We have Tolkien. We have beer reviews. There is a lot of stuff on here, and I hope you guys check out our YouTube channel so we can talk more and you can enjoy a lot of our great content. But now, let's get back to the show. Sorry about that.
Kids roll. Okay.
Yeah, it was not the baby. It was the 4-year-old who apparently forgot she fell asleep and was sleepwalking.
Always keep it interesting.
Yeah, it doesn't help that it's like 100 degrees outside right now.
Yeah.
It's gross. Okay, so Harry Potter and so with this one you mentioned how you have the rest of the series. How many are you planning on going with this one? Kind of before you said 3 books you got done, and then you said I'm working on a 4th, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Yeah. So I have 9 books in mind with essentially 3 trilogies of different age groups. So the
Same
first 3
characters.
is, yeah, same characters, each with its own kind of contained story, but every 3 will be kind of a period in time. So we'll start with the youth trilogy, where we go from 11 years old, 13 into 15. And then the young adult will be from 19 to 24 and then 26. And then there'll be an adult trilogy with some
Probably kids.
older age. Maybe kids. Yeah, there's a big theme about life and generations and the whole story is about growing up. So that's going to be a big element of like, what do you value and how do you have an interesting story about that tells something about a 30-year-old or a 40-year-old or older. So thinking about those moments in life and telling an interesting story that also ties into the bigger plot of the series.
Well, that's when it throws you away from Final Fantasy, because Final Fantasy characters are all like 14 through 22. Or Final Fantasy, like Quistis, the teacher's how old? She's 22. No.
Yeah.
Or I was just playing Final Fantasy 7, remake, because and it's like, oh yeah, all these people are children, essentially. Okay, I think in that one they're like 18 to 21, but it's always so weird. Like child soldiers are very popular in those RPGs.
Exactly. There's a lot of youthful drama, but then they end up. It's interesting how how the media and stories fit different characters into these different roles, and then in some it's not exactly clear exactly how old are you. Like I think Luke Skywalker in the original was supposed to be
18.
18, yeah, pretty young. And then obviously he gets older over the series, but I don't think I think it was like just a handful of years between the two.
So it was 3 years between the Star Wars and Empire, then 1 between Empire and Jedi, and then 30 whatever between that and Force Awakens.
So it's I have spent a lot of time thinking about sequels and the lessons of all the other series that are creating sequels, and what do you learn to make it interesting and tell something that's unique and fresh, but also it carries over things that you love from the earlier books. So definitely trying to be thoughtful about that. There's a different thinking about different tones, or the different, like Harry Potter has different mysteries. The Marvel comic series, like the Avengers and all those, have different kind of different tones or themes within the each of the different individual trilogies that they've been managing. So Iron Man's own trilogy kind of feels similar. It's very different than Guardians of the Galaxy or the Captain America arc. They each kind of create a different feeling with each of them to kind of keep it fresh and interesting. And so hopefully with Dark and Day, we do something that keeps it interesting and leverages the kind of different age period and the unique theme around that book to tell a story that's resonates with where the character should be, but also tell something new and interesting.
Well, another thing that you can do with that type of writing is, one thing I really respect Tolkien for is, he started with The Hobbit, which is written for children. Then Fellowship of the Ring. For people who don't know, Lord of the Rings, even though there's three books, they're technically six because there's two books in each one. He wrote them as six, and a publisher combined them as three. So Fellowship of the Ring, the first half is written at the same level as The Hobbit, and then the second half is written as a little bit higher, and then the books get progressively higher level as you go throughout until it ends at a significantly higher level than it started. And one advantage you
Yes.
have when you write things over time is as your audience ages, so can your book. Now, I don't expect most writers to be like Tolkien, who was a linguist and invented words and put in the Oxford Dictionary, who also wrote Lord of the Rings straight, and if he came to a part where he stopped, he started over. I can't imagine doing that. If you're ever like, I'm stuck, throw it all out, do it again.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
couldn't do it. But that process does make sense. As your audience ages, so can your books. I think Orson Scott Card's done a really good job with a lot of his stuff because he's, like the Ender's Shadow books are significantly different in theme and style than his original Ender's books. Children of the Mind is very different. So his
Right.
books change and evolve as his audience does. And if he gets a new audience, he writes for that audience. And I appreciate that. So with your ones, as you go through, as you age and change, because now having gone through what you've gone through, when you have kids, you kind of your life view changes, and so does your writing. It
Yeah.
just does because you think differently. As you go through life, your writing is going to change, and so will your characters, because they're parts of you, and so as they age, that's definitely a different opportunity in order to just show a little bit more about yourself. I just hope you don't get George R. R. Martin it and be like, I'm going to get this book out. I promise. No, you won't. I'm going to. You will not.
Yeah.
I'm going to get it. But what about the last book? Don't talk about that book.
Yeah. Yeah.
Winds of Winter might be coming, but Dream of Spring,
Ooh, yeah. Uh,
2045.
yeah. By the time everyone has forgotten about season 8, we'll get to.
It's going to be interesting to see the comparison. But
Yeah. 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 That's an interesting. Very interesting. I do hope now that I've kind of settled through these early parenting years, I know book 5 is already kind of kicking off. I feel like I have my feet on solid ground, really good theme. A lot of the plot elements are coming together, the character development elements are coming together. And yeah, so I'm feeling this is going to be a lot faster than the gap between book 3 and 4.
well, the biggest challenge is, just using George R. R. Martin, for example, there is a time jump in his books between books 3 and 4, or is 4 and 5. But there's a time jump, and that time jump was really challenging for him because you have to jump, but at the same time you can't. You have to. It's hard to do the jump because you're kind of in a groove. But if you don't do the jump, then you're going to get stuck in a cycle.
Yeah.
And so the jump is the hardest part. But once you get into that cycle again, then you can continue writing because you know these characters now. You know where they are and you know how they're going to go. I imagine after book 6, you're going to have another sort of similar kind of think about this break, and then
Absolutely. Like, and what story do you want to tell at the end, and how do you appreciate a lot of the influences of other really great series out there? Just with the recent trailer of Foundation on the Apple TV
Apple
service.
TV Plus. Why do you get all the shows I
Yes.
want to watch, but I don't want to buy you?
Totally.
Don't worry, Amazon's getting all the good fantasy too, with Wheel of Time,
That's
with Lord of
right.
the
Yeah.
Rings, in the Second Age. We're getting a Narnia series on Netflix. We're getting Avatar: Last Airbender done, the way it's supposed to be, hopefully, on Netflix. Oh, we're in such a good time.
It's an
Um,
incredible time to be a fan of sci-fi and fantasy genre. Like, really unbelievable. I remember growing up reading X-Men comics and the Avengers, and now we've had like the most amazing iterations of Marvel movies coming out, and and reading Lord of the Rings, and getting to see Ian McKellen and everybody just
Rocket.
personify such it was such a all-absorbing trilogy, and you want to go live in Hobbiton, and people are flying over to New Zealand to get a taste of what it's like to live in Hobbiton.
Yeah, that's actually near my grandparents' house. It's kind of cool.
Wow, that's
Um,
awesome.
so one thing that came to mind when I was reading this one, especially, probably because it's more fresh in my mind. So recently, I reread Ursula Le Guin's Wizard of Earthsea, I believe is
Yeah,
the first one,
yeah.
which definitely seems like it has an influence in the back of your mind somewhere, um, and clearly influenced some of Harry Potter, at least in style. But this one seems kind of like if you took Wizard of Earthsea, I was like, oh, what about if Wizard of Earthsea was animated? Then I remember that Studio Ghibli did one and it was terrible. Um, it was not a good movie.
They did the
But
Tales of Earthsea.
yeah,
Yeah,
not good movie.
not their best.
But I was thinking, have you ever seen the older? It's an older anime now, especially when it comes to quality of animation. Have you ever seen Record of Lotus War? Either of the two series of it?
Oh, that sounds familiar.
It's
I
kind of
think
like it's straight up
there's a
like a
video
Dungeons
game.
and Dragons ripoff. I think there's a video game of it too.
Yeah, I
But it's like a
remember.
Dungeons and Dragons ripoff, essentially.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's the type of anime where like, oh look, a dragon's fighting. Wait, why aren't they moving? They're just roaring. Oh.
Yeah, just
Um,
saving on the
Seeing
actual
any anime
animation.
on the money, yeah. But I was thinking, yours one when I do it, I see it in that sort of style, like the fantasy anime style, not like Sword Art Online type stuff. What like the classic like Record of Lotus War or even like Berserk if it was made for younger audiences.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
I could see that where there is a combination of kind of boundless imagination with a level of seriousness and consequence that kind of come together in this style of animation um, that I've just always loved, and I think it's a really good a space for Dark and Day to fit in, where there's bright colors, you have the freedom to create strange creatures and put big mechanical arms on people and have it look normal and fit in with the world. The whole concept of having like a technology side and a magic side um, blends well together within this style of kind of anime style art.
yeah,
Um, and there's a long history of anime taking on serious topics and having kind of serious dramas within it, while there is kind of this colorful, bright, youthful attraction to the different shapes and the imaginative types of creations like giant
yeah.
robots or giant monsters.
And even the kid shows, like for example, I used to work in a mental hospital, in a children's unit mental hospital, and there were rules that we can and cannot watch. You can't watch stuff about adoption or being like we couldn't watch Meet the Robinsons, which is a
Yeah,
G-rated movie, because a lot of these kids have been abandoned or adopted, and they didn't want to have
right.
to deal
The
with it.
topic is
And I had them. I was watching the original two series of Digimon.
oh yeah,
There was an arc, other than having to explain how come one of the Digimons had like a head come out of his crotch and shoot fireballs. I'm like, just keep going.
just
Don't
go with it.
don't
Yeah,
don't even answer. Don't talk. Head came out. Deal with it. But there's a whole arc about one of the characters finding out he's adopted and having to go through that, and that caught me off guard. I'm like, I cannot just like skip 3 episodes. I'm just kind of sitting there going, no one catch me. But it covers deep stuff like that, and then like future ones talk about like child warriors or talk about animal abuse and so on. And it's in these kid shows. And then, of course, you deal with the more adult ones like, Gundam shows are definitely almost always anti war, even though they're all about war. You have other
right.
ones talking about like Iron Blooded Orphans. Good grief, that's a deep show. That is not a show you can say, I'm going to sit down and watch something for enjoyment and calm. And oh, that's
Yes.
heavy. But they definitely put it in there in ways that the best of them kind of like how Pixar does. They put in adult themes in ways that fit the story, but at the same time, you'll get it when you need to get it.
Right. And
Um,
I think for me that's also one of the big powers of fiction is it exists in a different world, but it can help you as a therapeutic exercise of dealing with issues that are universal to the experience of thinking creatures and feeling creatures of you know searching for your place in the world or searching for a purpose or trying to understand the conflict around you. And that was one of my intentions with the series is how can we talk about uh, a lot of these issues of propaganda and of these kind of duality without getting lost in the murk of our own reality and the tribalism that exists and all the particulars. Well, you need to jump to a totally different universe, and you could explore some of these concepts and go through the emotions of feeling the various sides of this conflict without being kind of brought down or distracted by the particulars of how that affects us in our own world.
And we're at a time where kind of like the second generation of fantasy authors are all passing away. We have Ursula Le Guin, we have David Eddings, Brian Shakes, Robert Jordan. Terry Brooks is still out there, but he's not getting any younger. Terry Goodkind is still out there. Pratchett just passed away. We have all these this whole generation that is passing now fairly quickly. Right. And the next generation really hasn't become what it is yet. Like George R. R. Martin's kind of like what Guns N' Roses was to when hair metal was going out, and what was it called? My brain should know. Like Nirvana style, Nirvana, Pearl Jam, and them. The more stripped away sound. Kind of like the stopgap. Really popular, but a stopgap in there. Right. That's what he's kind of being. But the next generation is kind of forming, but hasn't really fully come out yet. J.K. Rowling is definitely part of that. But
right. And that's a huge influence. But
Riordan, with Percy Jackson and so on. But they're not all there yet, and so we're at this time where we're trying to create newer stories. And definitely the future is the type of one that you're doing. You have to tap into young adult people. You need to tap into what they're interested in. If people are playing games, it's a generation. This is a generation of readers who grew up on video games versus the generation of readers that grew up on television. And you kind of have to tap into what we know and how we see things. And I think your stories do it really well. And I have to say, I do love the arts a lot. And if I ever found it in a bookstore, which I don't even have a bookstore in my town or within 150 miles. Yeah, 150 miles, and there's a bookstore. It was definitely what I'd want to pick up, because I think having it physically in your hand with
there's a magic to that.
It's a lot more. And I do like my Kindle. I do like e-readers. It's very convenient. I can carry libraries in my hand. That's the whole point. But this is one I definitely would want to just hold, because it has that magical feel to it. And with this one, how many pieces of new art did you get?
In book 4, that's a good question. It's 2, 3, I think around 12 different characters. There's some that only show up in the books because they're kind of spoilers.
Yeah.
But there's a variety of kind of the people characters, these kind of scene art, and some monsters and interesting creatures to kind of set the tone for this quest adventure that the characters are on.
And do you commission all the art?
Yeah. The characters are all done by Andrew Ho. Okay. He was a comic book artist years ago, working for Marvel out of a kind of art group out of Korea called Udon.
Is that the ones who did like Peter Parker Loves Mary Jane, like the more anime looking?
They did do that one, yeah. I think that was one of them. They did a version of
great book.
Yeah, great art, great book, just really fun stories. I remember first seeing them. There was a short spin-off of Deadpool who's called Agent X, and it was like some other character, but they kind of made a story around, was he really Deadpool reincarnated when Deadpool died? And that was the first time that I noticed them kind of take on a bunch of work for Marvel, and that was quite some time ago. And now he does a bunch of things. He's been doing various work for different video game companies, and he does his own kind of cute relationships blog, which is or a kind of a comic series called HJ Story, where it's just kind of 1 or 2 panel, very kind of not the kind of it's very kind of cute, short, cartoony, just little love stories about his relationships with his now girlfriend and wife, and now their children and dog, and just a lot of cute little relationship sort of comics.
Nice.
And then whatever else he does on the side. But I'm really lucky. It's amazing to have met so many artists. There's a couple of other artists that have been doing the background scenes that I've met over the years, and it's just incredible what you can do when you have the internet and you can find just incredible artists that are willing to do some work for you especially if you're flexible with your timelines.
Yeah. And with the audiobook, you said it took 6 weeks to record. I know some that are told, "Can you do this in 3 days?" And I go, "Well, I'm going to drink a lot of water. Here's some honey, and let's go."
Yeah, that's intense.
There are some with a lot less flexible timelines um, than 6 weeks, and it looks like you gave him plenty of time to do what he needed to do, and usually the performances just get better once he gets to know the characters. It gets in their skin a little bit. He'll just keep on improving.
Yeah,
I'm assuming you've heard book 2 stuff already.
Yes. So there's there is audiobooks released for Darkened Day 2, the Withering Mark,
3.
and then 3 is The Angel's Masquerade, and he's working on the audiobook for The Impossible Quest now.
Okay, so he got the first. How long? So you said 6 weeks was the first one. How long did it take him to do all 3 of them?
It probably did it. Like his work was probably about that same length, and then the third book had just been completed right before this whole COVID thing happened, and Audible took another 3 months before I could review it all and actually got it out. So it only came out recently. So hopefully the Audible side of the process will be quicker with this next one.
3 months. I blink and like an entire month has passed, and I'm blinking and like, wait, was that a month or 3 days? Well, I don't understand. It's June. Oh, look, it's almost July. What? Yeah. Time is flying really weird. It goes really fast and slow at the same time. But for you, what is your day job now?
So my day job is at Microsoft. I work for a team that helps big corporations.
Microsoft Teams.
Yeah.
Teams. Not product placement at all.
Yeah. Try Teams. I guess we own Skype too. So.
You too.
But
you bought Skype though. But Teams is created by you
Skype.
guys.
We created Teams. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we do a bunch of like cloud Azure promotion with big corporations, and I do business analytics for them. So a lot of like Power BI.
So when you do your writing, I'm assuming you do it kind of like what I sort of do is kids go to bed, then it's writing for an hour or 2 type time.
Yeah, I try and actually do it in the mornings. It's easier for me to, especially recently, the kids are sleeping in later. Like before, when school was happening, that just didn't work out. But now that we have had a while of this Teams school meetings, they're sleeping in, and it's easier for me to just get up early and
you lucky dog.
That way. Yeah.
My kids rise with the sun, and I grew up in Alaska, and I dare never go back. I'm like, I would never sleep. We'd die.
That's rough.
And that means if you're doing working for Microsoft, that means you live in the Northwest, which means you have longer days than I do. And I'm in Arizona, and if my kids are there, the sun comes up. I'm like, I'm awake. Please don't.
Yes, I think one of the best investments we could make is blackout shutters in the kids' room.
We have blackout curtains, but the problem is my daughter will wake up and literally open them to see if there's sun yet.
Oh yeah.
And she has the baby in her room now, and sometimes she'll be like, I didn't wake him up. Like, what were you doing? I was helping him. You were in his crib with like 40 toys. I didn't wake him up though. Like, yeah.
Just sleep, please. Just sleep.
I usually write at night, but I work for schools, and so now I have a summer, and I'm just waiting to see what the heck's going to happen in the fall. I have an idea, but it's going to be interesting, and it's also going to be interesting as a writer how this affects book 5 and going onward, because kind of like a certain event that happened when we were in middle school, high school in 2001. I'm assuming this will probably have an effect on a lot of us where we just it's not going to leave.
Exactly. Like this, there is generational change, and I think about like people that went through the Depression. Well, the Depression wasn't 30 years long. It was a couple of years of kind of intense depression, but the people that went through it, it changed their lives for the rest of their lives. Their behaviors changed. The way that they are thinking about upcoming risks are all colored by the one of the past. And that's actually the core theme of book 2, The Withering Mark. It's that your life experiences have this effect on you. And if you go through a war, you go through some trauma, how do you get past a lot of that, knowing that we are kind of the sums of our scars in a lot of ways.
Yep.
And as an individual and as a society, it's very difficult to overcome those experiences.
Yeah, and in my lifetime, as far as major things go, the wall came down. We had 9/11 happened. We've had this. It's just it's a lot of events that definitely change you and just gives you kind of perspective on life. And it'll be interesting to see how it changes writing and definitely how it changes TV in the coming years.
Right.
Ooh-wee.
Yeah.
That'll be different.
And the creation piece of how do you go create TV? How do you go create anything where you need a bunch of people to be together in a space? And is this going to be one blip and moment in time, or
Is this the future?
Yeah, or once you turn the corner around wearing masks consistently, does that just become a norm now? Like in Asian cultures,
like Asia, yeah,
right?
It's
like
perfectly natural.
It's perfectly natural. If you have a cold, you just wear a mask all the time, and that's that's a great solution to help reduce the spread. And maybe that'll take on here. Maybe
And then cinemas, see how movie theaters change, and
right.
it'll be fascinating. But I'm very curious to see how this kind of affects how book 5 is, just because you're changing a lot too. And as your kids get older, you get new experiences with them. I'm quite sure you had tons of experiences with them the last 4 months that just you never expected ever to have.
Right, and you spark ideas, and as you go along, you're filling some of the character development or the plot development gaps with, this is an even better solution. This is an even better way to connect this plot lines, or this is a better way to represent the theme at this moment. And so it's really up until that last minute where everything seems completely done that really important things can change. Just with the latest idea.
But the good news is, once you finish book 5, you're more than halfway done.
That's right. On to book 6. So, and it's gonna more what I think is interesting in kind of turning the corner in the series from the early Academy focused trilogy to where we're going now is that there is a lot more. Like as you grow up, your worldview expands. You appreciate that, as a child, you kind of live in your home, you live in your school, you live in a smaller worldview or community generally, a couple of little bubbles that you connect with. And as you get older, the complexity increases and your awareness of how things work increases. And book 5 is called The Fragile Tower, and it's themed basically about that moment in their lives where they're about 24, where it's become very clear to them, how the challenges of just managing your own life and that complexity, as well as appreciating the challenges of managing the complexity of all these civilizational issues and being exposed to. There's more views of the off-planet spaces and characters that you get introduced to.
Well, and then you also hit the the common thing of when you're a teenager, and when you're a young adult, you have a certain amount of like society and people around you. But once you get married, have kids, suddenly the world becomes a lot lonelier in many ways.
Right.
Because the group that you associate with is suddenly very different, and people that you would used to talk to don't talk to anymore, or it's different. Like you see family differently, you see friends less. Usually, it's just a very different dynamic.
There's this isolating factor as you grow up and turn away from your own sort of growth and development and career or exploration and being kind of young fancy free to, okay, now I have this really important family unit to raise and protect, and how all encompassing that can be. And yeah, so it'll be interesting to see, where a lot of the characters go in that direction, and how are they going to struggle through dealing with their own mortality, their own sense of generational values, of pivoting away from I have personal goals to I have goals for children, or I have goals for a way to contribute to society, or a legacy to leave behind.
So you're the type of author that where your characters speak to you, and when they do, then you kind of write, or are you the kind of one that has a path in your mind already? What style of author would you say you are?
I would lead with the plot and themes are kind of primary drivers, and then there's a long struggle of finding how does a character fit in the right way with that theme.
Okay. Because I'm currently writing one myself. I finally like I'm gonna get this idea out of my head, and I started with the November writing month. I didn't get 50,000. I got like 47,000.
Still pretty good.
But my thing is like I finished writing draft one, and I'm like, well, I need someone else to read this and tell me it's crap, so I can actually go through and edit it.
Yeah, like
'Cause
what
I
part's
can't
good, and
do
where
that
are the
myself.
gems? Yeah,
And that's a struggle. And then I get to the end of like a character that wasn't actually a main character to start with. Suddenly at the end, it's like that's the character I want to write. Okay,
yeah, like they're
so
the
that's
interesting
what's
one.
going to happen. And it's just interesting how it turns out, how characters actually talk to you throughout. Um, and it just kind of forms that way. And
Absolutely, I think one of my big struggles with book 4, The Impossible Quest, was figuring out like what is the story here. And right at the beginning, I start off with essentially positioning the whole book as Suriana's story instead of Jono's, and um, and that was also kind of reflected, which was a big kind of aha moment of, oh, she had tried something in book 3 to create this student exchange program, and it was bold and it was crazy, and you're 15 trying to do this big thing, and how would she feel if it was harder than she expected, if it didn't work out, and she needed to reflect on, what do I do next with my life? I had this idea, and now I need to come up with some other new purpose. And that was also really important for Jonah's story, because his transition at the end of book 3 is kind of this big aha moment for him, where he does have a sense of this epiphany of, okay, now I have an idea of who I should be and what I want to do. And then in book 3, I just let him carry that out, and it did let the characters pivot from who is the focal point that connects to the theme of struggling to find your identity at age 19.
did you ever have the thought when writing this one with your struggles of like, what if I just leave it at 3?
I've never thought about that, because I've always I originally thought of the story in an arc that like the core part of the plot has not played out yet. So it's always been there, is that these are parts in this series story, and it's the series story that I want to tell ultimately about, starting with the first book about the false duality of we should hate the other side because they're not like us, and then at the end thinking about, well, is there a more true duality, and what does that look like, and who does that bring together, and is it not really about these surface issues, but what's the material truth of, is it good versus evil, is it does it exist at all, and if so, what does that look like?
So I guess right now you should probably direct people where to find it. So we know it's on Amazon.
Yep.
All the books are on Amazon.
All the
1,
books
2,
are.
3, and 4. Sometimes they bundle them. 1, 2, and 3, I believe.
Yep, the fourth one should be in the bundle now. If you go to www.darkenday.com, you can see all the art. There's a bunch of little descriptions, and there's links to the Amazon paperbacks and Kindle books, as well as a link to the Audible series page. It'll show you a little icon for the audiobook for book 4, but that's not up yet. It'll probably be another couple months before that's available.
But 1 through 3 are definitely up there, so they can read the first trilogy and get that story in there. And it kind of works kind of like my brain's been trying to think about it this entire time, but it's kind of like the Shannara books, because those are in batches of trilogies. They go,
Yeah, that's right.
what was it? Sword, Elfstones, and Wish Song is one story, though, that's, they cross generations every time. But then there's the Voyage to Shannara. There's batches of trilogies, and it's similar. I'm not going to say it compares with those ones because they're very different. They're very different.
They do take it in very interesting, varied directions.
And one becomes a post-apocalyptic series before the end, anyway. Not a spoiler, folks. Really, not a spoiler. But okay, so darkandday.com.
Yep, tons of new character art. There's even a couple from book 5. Just some fun kind of world building. Book 5. No spoilers, but it's just some new races and just a lot of fun art to go look at.
And what about social media? If people want to ask you questions, reach out to you. Do you have a Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, so on?
Yep, I have. I'm on Twitter at Dark and Day. I spend a lot of time on Reddit, probably more than I should. So there is a Dark and Day Reddit there.
As long as you don't go to the dark part of Reddit to do the Dark and Day stuff.
It's just the normal Reddit, and then Facebook as well. All of it is kind of the .com/darkandday all spelled out.
I think I was curious about the pictures behind me. That's the cover. This is the cover of The Impossible Quest. The full one sheet, the full front and back, which is it's good, isn't it, guys? That looks pretty good. And all the books have excellent covers, just like that one. And if you get them on ebook ones, you do get to see the covers. You get to see some of the art, but it's not quite the same. Though it is better on my Kindle Fire than it was on my original Kindle Paperwhite.
Yeah. I think with the ebooks, I had done them all in black and white originally, but now with the new ones, you could do. The colors, it looks great, and so maybe we'll.
The colors make it pop a lot more.
Yeah.
It's
beautiful art.
And Amazon has this you can print on demand, right? Am I thinking right?
That's right. Yeah. So it's all through Amazon basically, and then when you order it, they'll print it out, and they're actually pretty quick now. It's improved pretty dramatically in the past 5 or 6 years. Even in the quality of the books now, are really really top shelf compared to where they were, about 5 or 6 years ago.
Which says a lot, because people forget Amazon's a book company. That is what they started out as. That is what they are. They've branched off, but they're a book company first and foremost. And I'm glad that they now print the books the way that we want them printed, rather than just being a Barnes and Noble killer, which they also were. Or Borders Books killer and everything else killer. But I'm glad.
Yeah, brick and mortar retail.
There's no other brick and mortar place they'd show up, though, unless you have it personally with you at like a con or something.
Yeah. And hopefully we'll get back into that. All this craziness dies down, but because it's just so great, it's great to see people. It's great to meet new people. Last time I did it, I did have some big printouts, and I had like little stickers of a lot of the characters, which were just like nice little kind of like 1.5 inch sort of size kind of collectibles. But it's a fun way to kind of show off and hand out the characters and advertise.
Well, I can say this: if I ever saw you at a con, I'd like you to have printed copies of the books, and I'll buy all of them.
Definitely.
So, but on that note, it's great to catch up. Great to have a continuation of this one, and I expect to see the 5th book in a lot less time than 4+ years.
Yeah, not quite 4 years. If I could get it out in 2, I think I'll be happy with that. But
well, you have all this extra time now. Well, not really. You have much, well, extra-ish time. Yeah. People think you have a lot more time, but you also don't, because you have to be at home with your kids if you're at home, and then you have to teach them, and then you have to make sure they're not dying.
Exactly. Entertain them, and yeah, and then
stay motivated somehow.
Exactly.
But I look forward to seeing book 5, and then you're over the hump. And then because with book 4, like I have an idea where it's going, but book 5 is really the one that's going to tell me.
With book 5, you'll there's a lot of open mysteries that will be it will definitely give you the direction of the rest of the series.
Well, I look forward to seeing book 5, and when I have more money, get more of them on Audible, since I have the first one courtesy of you, but I need to get the rest of them because I'm a completionist. I need to have them all.
Yeah, and they're great. And as you were saying earlier, I think Wayne as the narrator even settles in even more to the world and the characters. And yeah, I think book 3 just really shines with his voice. So that's been a lot of fun to see that come together.
Well, I look forward to hearing it, and look forward to seeing what other people think about it too, because I enjoy them. And I know genre-wise, that's not everyone's cup of tea. Fantasy is a huge genre for a reason. People who like Game of Thrones are not necessarily going to like Redwall. People who like
Yeah,
Redwall are not necessarily going to like Shannara. But there's a little bit of something for everyone, and I think this will definitely find its niche. And if I have to advertise it among lit RPG people, I'll advertise it among lit RPG people.
yeah. I think they could appreciate it. It's not exactly the same, but there's probably a lot of overlap that they like.
I think so. I think so. And on that note, thank you so much for being on
Great.
the show, and I look forward to book 5.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.